And we are live, bro. How's it, man?
Yeah, well in yourself, man.
uh, I mean, we've got an exciting afternoon, both of us, obviously, with what's going on. But we had to come together for episode 3 of
Yeah,
this new exciting podcast between a guy in Texas and a guy in Joburg. And
yeah,
felt like something, being that we were both gun lovers, and I obviously live in the country with the highest amount of guns per capita by a mile. And yeah, so I felt like kind of prefacing this by starting out and kind of saying, uh, I don't think everyone should have a gun, but I think people should be allowed to get them who need them with ease. Um, when we get to kind of your side of the story, we're going to find out that that's not necessarily the case, is it, Pierre?
no, not at all. You know, I guess whenever we think about guns, we think about America. That's the first thing that comes up, right? Because I mean, you see all these guys online. It's like they got like hundreds of guns, and you're like, how the hell you can help a small country take over the government? You know?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting dichotomy here when it comes to it, because a lot of people, especially when I've been overseas, they've asked me about it, and it's like it's written into the fabric of the laws that establish this country. It's the second law that was established, which is your right to bear arms. And it was because this country was founded on militiamen who got guns and fought off the British. So we get into that. Obviously, the Second Amendment is very big in this country, but I feel like kind of also prefacing this with talking about, unfortunately, something that's not a very pretty subject, which is the statistics for crimes between both of our countries. I got this from a website called Nation Master. It's not a media owned website. It's just a poll crunching website, a numbers crunching website. So there's no political bias on this website or anything. And there's all kinds of interesting statistics on here. I kind of saw some. I was a bit shocked. Annual cannabis use. Where do you think the U.S. ranks worldwide in annual cannabis use?
Probably first, man. If I had to guesstimate it.
We're number 1. Where do you think the Republic of South Africa ranks?
I don't know. I would probably rank them quite low, even though the law is actually quite lax on that, because you're allowed to actually smoke cannabis here.
You are ranked 13th in the entire world in cannabis usage. And then you get kind of things like interesting statistics, which this one is kind of I'll kind of skip that, but guns per 100 residents. At the very top of the list, you have the United States. There are 88.8 guns for every 100 people in this country. While on your side of the coin, you have 12 for every 100 people. You're ranked 48th in the world. You look at a thing like the homicide rate by country. Both of our countries come in the top 10. Your unfortunately homicide rate per capita is higher than the United States. You're ranked 3rd, while we are ranked 9th. Yeah. The murder rate per million people, we are ranked 43rd. You are ranked 11th. And then the real alarming statistic that came also on this, and this is something that, like, this is a pretty nasty one, and it is unfortunate. And in this particular category, this is per 1 million people, and it is rapes and sexual assaults. The United States ranked 9th in the world, and I think you already know who is number 1.
Yeah,
it is
we're bad with that.
It is the Republic of South Africa is number 1. Yeah. it's not a pretty statistic, obviously, but I preface this by saying that, like, as much as South Africa and the United States are so different in so many ways, there are a lot of things like violent crime. We're both in the top 10, like we do have a lot of stuff in common. I think another interesting statistic was the amount of people we incarcerate by country, where the United States ranked number 1, and we were like a good 20 points ahead of the second country. We incarcerate more people in this country than any country in the world, while the Republic of South Africa was 33rd on that list.
Yeah.
So I preface that by saying that like, look, it's we both live. I live in what would be considered a relatively safe country. And as a person who's been outside of the US, where do I rank South Africa? I rank it as a relatively safe country as well. Yeah. Although the numbers may not agree with that. There's a lot worse places than South Africa. There's a lot worse places than South Africa, but there's also a lot better places too. And I guess that's kind of where we got into it. Was I wanted to know, you could tell the audience, those that don't live in South Africa, why don't you kind of start from the beginning on how difficult it is to get a firearm in the Republic of South Africa?
All right. So to get a firearm in South Africa is pretty damn difficult, to be honest. So there's quite a lot of processes that you have to go through. So the first thing that you need to do is you actually need to go through to like a college type place, right? A place that would teach you the laws about gun use, how to use a gun. They'll take you for shooting practice, all these type of things. And then, of course, you'll write your exam, after which you'll have to pass said exam. Then a couple of days or weeks later, depending on who you go through, you would generally get a certificate, which is like a proficiency of you being able to use a gun. That proficiency you then have to take through to the police station to apply for a competency, right? Now, a competency takes quite a number of months to get. So you have to submit, number one, you have to take 3 people with you. In the areas that I live in, I had to take 3 people with me as people that's going to say, look, this guy is not a criminal. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. He's not going to go around popping people off. You know what I mean? So they have to be my references effectively. All right. So I had to take them with, even though a lot of people in South Africa will say, no, you can only have a form filled out. There's a form that gets filled out that for your references. But in the area that I live, they refuse to accept the forms because they say people can falsify these forms. So they want to do the interview with the guys themselves, right? So they interview those guys on the day that you go for your competency. So then your documentation and everything needs to get submitted. So of course you have to submit your proficiency, your ID, like everything like even. I would be surprised if they, in a couple of years, don't ask for your blood type as well, to be honest. But yeah, then that goes towards, I would imagine, like some head office of the police stations in South Africa, where they do all of these type of things about guns and so forth. And then only after, well, I've been waiting 3 months now for my competency, right? So they say, according to the law, that they got 90 days to, of course, give you your competency. But let's be honest, number one, COVID happened. So, of course, there was a lot of delays and everything. Secondly, I don't think that our system was very efficient to start off with. So you'd probably wait a couple of months longer, right? Only at that point, then you get your competency. So, and then you can purchase a gun. All right. So then at the gun store, they will issue you with a certificate. Then have to go. You have to go.
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but go ahead, continue with the certificate.
All right, so then you get a certificate from this gun store that you purchased your gun from. You then have to take that alongside your competency and your proficiency back to the police station. All
Mhm.
right. Then they will submit it for the licensing of the firearm. All right. Now, this I've heard can take anything from a year to 2 years. Okay.
Okay.
Once you get that certificate back, your gun license, now only you can go and collect your gun at the gun store. So the whole process that I've spoken to people say that generally it's around about 2 years before you can get a gun.
And how many guns can you get?
Well, it depends on how you're buying your gun. So if you're using it for self defense, you're only allowed one gun, and it has to be it's not allowed to be fully automatic. All right, so it can either be a handgun or it can be a shotgun. All right,
Do,
nothing
do you
else,
have
only one.
do you have a legal limit to the amount of bullets that your gun can hold? Like
200.
capacity. That's what you're allowed to
No,
own, but your gun is only allowed to hold. What's like magazine capacity? Do you
no,
have
no.
magazine
No,
No.
there's no magazine capacities. No,
Okay.
you as a person. I know that some states you're only allowed to have 10 bullets in your gun in America, but
Mhm.
in South Africa, it's it's whatever. You're only
No.
allowed to have 200 bullets in your own possession, though. That
Okay,
for
so
the gun
there's
that you
ammunition
are.
restrictions.
Yes, yes,
Okay. Well, so that's the legal way to go to purchase a firearm in South Africa. But as we
yes.
both know, it is an issue in our country just as much as it is an issue in your country. Here we have loopholes. Obviously, you have theft, that kind of thing. How are, I don't like using this term, but how are the bad guys getting guns in South Africa?
Oh, for sure. I think they're getting it from numerous sources. I think they're getting it from cross border.
Okay.
One of the topics, because we're not very we say we are, but we're not, because of if you have a look at the amount of illegal people in South Africa, right? To be honest, I know that America has got a lot of that issue as well, all right, with illegals,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I would imagine that our percentage on that is even worse than America, purely because of the amount of people that we actually house in the first place.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got like 60 million people in South Africa that's legal, around about there, and I would imagine there's another couple of million here that's illegal. So the
Yeah.
ratio is quite poor, right? So I would imagine that that there's a lot of import across borders, but also there's a lot of corrupt officials, man. So guns that goes into the system that goes missing, those type of things, and there's some people that make their own weaponry. So
We
we've
have
seen
seen that. We have
pipe
seen that.
guns and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. We have seen that. Not necessarily here in the US, but if you
mm,
watch any type of documentaries, usually Brazil or Mexico or Guatemala, you'll see these handmade guns and things like that. Um, with that being said, okay, obviously, um, I, my political side of the spectrum here in the U.S. is very anti-gun. Um, I have a colleague who I've brought up many times, Gary. He is a real life 100% Texan. Like he is as Texan, drives a big ass truck, has an accent, everything. And he is also a National Rifle Associate. He's an NRA member. He does it because
yeah,
he is a pro gun guy. He also does it for the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And we always have these debates. He thought I was anti gun. And then I had to explain to him, no, 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 no. I'm 100% pro Second Amendment. It is my right to own a firearm in this country. My fiance, very liberal, 100% pro gun because it's our right to own one in this country. I think anybody that talks about taking away gun owners' legal rights is not on my side. Is not I can't agree with them on that because I think that gun ownership is a good thing and can be a good thing. Now, where we have the issue is much like yours, much like in America, it's the illegal ways that bad guys get these guns. So
yeah,
in the United States, when you go to purchase a firearm through a distributor or a dealer, you have to fill out what's called a Form 4473. 4473 ensures that you're not because you can't own a gun if you're a convicted felon, if you have a restraining order placed against you, a protective order or something, you're not allowed to purchase a gun legally. And there's a few other crimes that keep you from owning a gun. You also have to be 21 years of age to purchase a handgun. Now, if you were to come and visit me, Pierre, and you saw my Glock and you like my Glock and you're not a citizen of the United States, but you want my gun, I can legally sell you my gun without performing any type of background check.
Yeah.
I could just hand me a wad of cash and I hand you a pistol. Now, there's people who want to close that loophole. Like, you can come to America, Pierre, and visit. We could go to a gun show in Dallas or at any convention center. And guess what? You could go in there if you've got money. You can go in there and find a private dealer and buy a gun. No background check at all. Now, what happens is if you say you are a convicted felon or say you do have a protective order, you do something like that, and you do buy a gun through those means, you have just committed another felony. You will go to prison for that. The guy that sold you the gun washes his hands of the responsibility once he's sold it's a private sale. There are people that want to close those loopholes, and I think we need to fix that, obviously, but I think also making it harder to legally buy a gun isn't helping when you have a black market for it.
Yeah, 100%. I can't imagine that it actually helps anything, because it's difficult to get for the people that wants to go do it by the legal means, but the guys that gets it by the legal means are not the ones that's committing the criminal acts.
Most of the time, yeah. So we talk about restrictive gun laws. I mean, a lot of people bring up Australia here. They had a mass shooting back in the 80s. They did a national buyback program. They haven't had a mass shooting since. I live in America. It's a statistic. There's a couple of statistics you could throw back in America's face all the time. One is that we talk about leading the world and everything. The only things we really lead the world in are the amount of people we lock up and the amount of money we spend on our military and mass shootings. These are the three statistics that we lead the world far and far on. And it's always another thing that comes up to me. Why do you think that happens? And I think there's a lot of reasons that mass shootings happen in this country. And I think one of the biggest ones is honestly mental health. Back in the 80s, they started cutting funding for mental health programs. That's why you see so many homeless people here, because they kicked them out of hospitals and they ended up in the prison system. I think that we also live in a time where when I was a kid and I got beat up, went home and cried to my parents, and something was fixed about it. Either they talked to the school or your dad took you out back, told you put your fists up, and taught you how to live another day. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. That kid will go in his room and get on his computer and, find people online that will tell him, oh, no, that happened because they hate you. It's no longer, we have, it's a word here. I don't know if you guys use it. Do you guys use the word incel there at all? Incel?
No, not in my circles, anyways.
But
I'm Afrikaans, so I've never really heard of anybody saying that.
So incel means somebody that's involuntarily celibate. It's usually a man who just can't get laid. Okay. So typically when you were younger, like, was I a stud with the ladies as a teenager? Hell no. Like, I was okay looking, but like, I wasn't a stud. Did I get rejected? Of course I did. Okay. But guess what? I cleaned up my appearance. I brushed my teeth nice and sparkly, and I went right back out, and now those guys are not going right back out. They're going and sitting in their room and getting on message boards, and they're being told that, oh yeah, the reason you're not getting laid is because women hate men now. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, you've got to have game. You've got to be able to attract a mate. Like, you're not going to attract a mate with boogers hanging out of your nose and a bad appearance. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah. It's in nature, you know. Even animals, they'll ruffle up their feathers to look, you know. I mean, it's those guys are going home. They're getting on the internet and they're getting told, oh, you know, you're not getting laid because you're this, this, and this. You know, you need to get a gun and show those people. And it's like, that's not necessarily how it should be. Like, I don't think, you know, like I said, I'm not a ladies' man, but I've never had a problem getting ladies either. But you know, it's that's what I think. I think it's just mental health.
I think it's a lot of a deeper seated problem, and I think it's a generational mental issue, if I can say it that way. That, you know, back in the day. So I'll speak of South Africa, right? So, because I mean, that's what I got knowledge of, and we can see how we can push it through to the US as well. But
yeah.
Back in the day in South Africa, like there was a man went to go work, and the wife was the stay-at-home mom, right? She took care of the household, and you know, those type of things. So the kids went. If they had any problems, they would go to mom. Listen, mom, I've got this and that and so on, so a problem, and she would obviously address it. That's what her role is in the household. If there was any issues with other people at school, your dad would obviously get involved. And as you mentioned, your dad would go and he would teach you how to protect yourself or whatever the case might be. Today's lifestyle, a lot of those people has now grown up and now they're having kids themselves, but it's such a competitive market at the moment, right? In the work community, in A, B, C, D, E, F, there's different facets that you can bring up. But what happens is a lot of the times the kids are no longer being parented, right? Like, so this is a very controversial thing, and I know a lot of people would probably disagree with it, but guess what? I don't give a shit, right? So in South Africa, you still spank your children.
Yeah.
They're naughty, they get spanking. All right. I know a lot of guys will say, oh, you manhandling your children, blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about stabbing your kid with a kitchen fork, you know. I'm talking about your kid is naughty, you give him a spanking, right? So what I'm trying to get to is that's the first thing, right? So no, nobody's getting a spanking anymore. Secondly, the parents are so busy with XYZ that the kids hang out in the malls half the time. They hang out in online half the time. They know there's no more that communication, right? So, and that's why you find that there's a lot more depressed people these days than what there was before. Okay, so this is the type of stuff that I see, right, in South African culture, right? So the kids are more depressed than they ever been. They don't get hidings the way they used to from the parents to really teach them from what's right and wrong. There's no more communication in the family unit, and there's just a couple of things that goes hand in hand. So now people are looking for other people around them and their opinions, right? Online, on online circles like you guys do, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there is a hell of a lot of sick people out there online that knows how to make an impression on younger children. All right, and I find that's a massive problem. Now, to be quite frank, in South Africa, we see these things, but we don't necessarily see it just here. We see it obviously abroad in the news and all those type of things, right? From what happens in the US and what happens in Canada and the UK and all these type of things. So I'm still very, very firm in my belief that there's a specific way of going about your business. So if you're a parent, you need to make sure that you are present. Because otherwise you're raising up, like I always say, or Chris Rock actually said it. He says, if your child's calling his mother Pam and his grandmother Mommy, the kid's probably going to jail.
and it's interesting that you kind of tell that whole thing, because the same thing has happened here, Pierre. It used to be the father worked, the mother stayed at home. Well, then they didn't want to pay the father anymore, so the mother had to get a job. So now you no longer have the mother at home. Then this is kind of more of a unique to America thing, especially the mom found out that she could get more government assistance if the dad wasn't in the house. So then you have the mom, 4 or 5 kids, no father in the house, getting government assistance. And then say that situation's not like that. The father is just a piece of cock and he decides to leave. So now the mom's working 70 hours a week just to keep food in your mouth and a roof over your head. It's a term that we had here in North America back in the 80s. It's called a latchkey kid. It was a kid who wore their key around their neck because nobody was home when they got home.
Yeah.
They came home to an empty house because mom had to work 2 jobs. And those kids grew up and then they started having kids and they didn't know that patriarchal bond. I went to school when you still had corporal punishment. Did I ever get it? I'm not proud to say, but yeah, man, I got my butt whooped at school. I mean, I acted up. They take a paddle, and that was it. Did it fix my attitude? Probably not, but you know what I mean? Like, I grew up where that was still a thing. Then, in the late 1980s in this part of the world, we got something called 911. This is the number you call when you need police immediately. And then we got programs where it was like, oh, is your mom or dad smoking pot? You need to call the police on them. And it got to be where kids got spanked and they called child services. Yeah. My father hit me with a belt. Oh, that's child abuse. Well, once that became an issue, you saw it leaving the schools. You had corporal punishment leaving the schools. The sad part in all of that is the generation that paddled us in school, okay, who are now in their 60s and 70s. If you ask them what happened, they have a very generic answer. Oh, we took God out of the schools.
Yeah.
And it was like, don't you remember when there was, it's, I don't think that had anything to do with it because when you still had God in schools in this country, black kids and white kids couldn't go to school together. So it was like, it's like God had nothing to do with this. What had to do with it was that everything got massively more expensive and corporations got greedier and greedier and didn't want to pay living wages to fathers to support families. So mom had to get a job. And then you saw the breakdown of the family, like over it.
I think also a lot of it's got to do with the feminism, right? I think a lot of that also had to do with that because of equal rights, etc., etc. Now, don't get me wrong, myself and my wife, okay, we are equals in our household, right? But okay, she knows I'm the head of the household, all right? It's just how we were brought up in South Africa, right? So the thing is, if she wants to do something that's going to take financial issues to us or whatever, right, like that, she will come and ask me about it, right? Because she respects me in that. But I would do the same.
You're a partnership.
But and I would do the same with her, right? So I mean, we agree on things before we just do things, right?
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But to give you an idea, when dinner gets served, my wife brings me my food. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So we very much still like a traditional South African relationship. So I would sit down, she'd bring me my food, all right. But when it comes to important matters and stuff like that, we 100% we are equal. Okay, there is no person better than the next.
Who's manning the braai?
Of course, I was manning the braai.
Okay, this is something I don't think Americans understand about. Like, we have barbecue culture here, obviously. I very much know the braai culture. The braai culture is 4 dudes sitting around the braai, sipping beers, gossiping. And it's not that we're misogynistic or whatever, but we're manning the grill. And it's like, it's not oh, that's so it's not sexist. It's like it's a cultural activity that people like don't understand, that like
Yeah.
when it comes to the braai, to the grill, that's man's work. Now, I'm not saying a
Yeah.
woman can't braai. No, a woman can braai. But if I'm with
Yeah.
my mates, it's four guys around looking at the body. We're looking at the chipolatas. We're looking at the body. We're poking it, making and prodding, and making sure it's cooked properly, sipping beers and talking. And it's like there's nothing sexist about it. It's just a cultural activity. The man's the braai.
Look, at the end of the day, that's and this is where feminism becomes a bit of a problem for me, right?
Okay.
Because just because people can do everything the same doesn't mean that they should.
They should.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that they should. All right. So for me, for instance, my wife can bride just as good as I can. I can promise you, my wife can cook fucking good meals. All right. That's not a problem. Okay. But the thing is, there is still differences in us culturally, and in terms of us being men and women. What interests her does not necessarily interest me, and vice versa, right? So she likes baking, for instance. Just because we're equals doesn't mean now I have to go and bake. No,
No,
she enjoys baking. All right.
I hate baking.
And
I hate baking.
yeah, 100%. But the difference is I enjoy braaiing, where she enjoys making the salads or the braaibroodjies or whatever, right?
And then
So
eating the braai.
yeah, 100%. So what I'm saying is, yes, we are equals and we can do the same thing, but that doesn't mean that we don't each have our place. You know, stuff that interests me, I will do, and stuff that interests her, she will do. All right. It doesn't mean that now because we're equal, she has to take over in everything I do, or vice versa, that now I have to take over everything she does. I mean, I do washing, believe it or not. I do clothes washing. All right.
That's
I'm not
me.
phased to do the homework.
I'm particular about how my laundry
Yeah.
is done, so I do it. Yeah. Like it's not a
Yeah.
I
And
think
my
that's
wife has never ironed clothing ever in her life. She's never ironed my clothing. Never. All right. Because I've got not that I'm doing it. I've got somebody that comes and does it for me every Saturday, right?
Okay.
So that's obviously something that America is not pretty familiar with, I guess, anymore. But we got cheaper labor, right? Ladies that come and clean your house
we
and
have that
stuff like
here.
that.
We have that here. We have like especially in a town like
No.
this, which
What
are
I'm
like
saying is,
college kids. Yeah.
no. What I'm saying is, it's not a business. All right. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not a company that has a bunch of cleaners come to your house and you have to be wealthy to be able to afford it. All right. What I'm saying is, middle class people, just like me, we've got people that can clean our houses once a week, twice a week. Some people I know has got a live-in maid that obviously cleans their place. So, but I mean, I'm getting a bit off topic here. But what I was trying to get to is that there was always a specific role for each person in a relationship, right? And I feel like a lot of that, because of the feminine movement, and once again, I'm not saying that it was a bad thing. What I'm saying is and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that still want to be traditional women, all right, that wants traditional men. I'm not saying that either. So I'm sure they still exist. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of the new age woman that is very pro woman and uh, negative towards men having children, and those children don't have a father influence in their lives. That's because the mother is so masculine that the father figure is never there, right? And I find that also causes quite a lot of damage long term to a child. I think a child does need a mother and a father to teach them both sides of the coin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a difficult subject to go in, and it's so wide, right? There's so many
Yeah.
factors that impact that.
We talked about guns and the gun issues, and I think we both have kind of agreed it's been the breakdown of the family. Now, are there certain patriarchal things about that situation that weren't necessarily great? Of course, there were. A lot of our fathers were hard, cold men that didn't show
Yeah.
emotion because they were men. we had to change that. Like we've had to
Yeah.
change that. That like we have to say, hey, dude, are you okay, man? Like, you mentally? Are you all right? Like, it's okay to have emotions as a man, and it's okay to show them. But in the same respects, it's like the family, the patriarchal family. We've broken away from it, and it was like no. Changes have been made. We should have this. Like I don't see. Like me personally, I don't see how a father can walk out on their kid. It happens, and it's really sad. But that's just because I got raised with a little bit more pride than that. Like you don't walk out on your kids ever, ever. Now, not to say that there aren't strong single moms. Tracy Gray, she raised one of the guys that plays for the local rugby team here. She is a super mom. She is a mother and a father. She's a super mom. But there's a lot of men that try to do it by themselves that do a horrible job because you need that womanly role. And it's the breakdown of the family because of having to both go get jobs, because it's a rat race, because of all these things. And those children, those kids that are growing up in that, they don't know that a gun is a tool. It's not a toy. It's not a problem eliminator. It's a tool. You have to master the use of it. And I think that's where it is. People don't value life anymore because it's such a rat race, or they just have never been shown like, hey, like you live in South Africa. I'm sure there's stuff on a daily basis that just you're like, man, fuck this place.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you probably say, I love it here. I love it here at the same time, you know, and I'm the same way here.
Every single day, I drive out my driveway and I'm probably cursing at 3 people already, right? Because we got something called taxi drivers here in South Africa. I don't know if you know taxi drivers, but I mean, you've been in South Africa before, but anybody that's never been here, they don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about your yellow cab taxi. I'm not talking about your black
Uber
looking car. I'm not talking about Uber. Exactly, right? I'm talking about a minivan filled with triple the amount of people than what it's legally allowed to carry, driving on sidewalks, pushing in front of traffic, driving in the middle of the road, like just like cutting you off everywhere. This is what I'm talking about, right? So I'm already flicking like 3 people on the way to work. Right? So you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, recently, Texas is the worst state for road rage in America. Texas is and it's because so many people are moving here and it's so over congested. Now, granted, vehicles must pass inspection here. You must have auto insurance here. So, like, you don't see a guy driving a van with a pair of vice grips as the steering wheel. I've seen it. Okay, I know
got that image.
Yeah, I've seen it in South Africa. A guy with vice grips steering his vehicle. You don't see that here. That's illegal. But yeah,
and the problem with that though is that those guys remain on the roads because a lot of, I'm not saying all cops, but a lot of the cops are corrupt and they take bribes. Okay. And this is where the crime factor comes in, because it's not just in the taxis, right? It's like so many other industries where people get away with stuff because they are paying off certain officials. And recently in Tshwane, it was actually in the news where the cops pull the guys over and they demand a bribe, and they throw you in jail if you don't bribe them. Okay. Like at nighttime, that's what they did, and it made major news here in South Africa. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of corrupt officials all around this place, and that just makes the whole crime aspect a lot worse, because if you think about it, right, 99% of the time, the guys that's committing all these gun violence in South Africa, it's not handgun violence half the time, right? It's guys blowing up cash in transit vehicles, okay, and gunning them down with AK-47 rifles. That's what they're doing here, right? That's how bad it is. But Sure, I'm sure there is a lot of handgun violence as well, especially like let's say maybe Cape Town region where all the gangs are so rife, and maybe Joburg CBD where it's rife. In the suburbs where I stay, it's not really a problem. I mean, and that's why, of course, you had it in your mind that South Africa is a relatively safe place. Yes, it is. Okay, if you stick within places that's relatively safe. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
don't be a stupid person coming from the US wanting to take your children to Hillbrow at 8 o'clock at night on a fucking Sunday because you're going to be flipping murdered. All right. You're just being stupid now. So,
yeah.
I mean, South Africans don't even go there, and that's the type of thing that we find a lot of times happening is that, and that's where people say, oh, no, I was a victim of a crime when I visited South Africa. Yeah, why, bro? Because you went to a fucking dumb place. Like, stay away from there. Like, ask your locals, ask the people around you, is it safe to go where I'm going? All right. That's your first thing that you need to speak to is the locals.
Look, it's the exact same thing. If you visited Dallas, Texas, here, there are neighborhoods you simply do not go to at night. Now, if you're looking for ladies of the evening or narcotics, yes, by all means, go to those neighborhoods. But if you're just going to look because you want to see how poor people live, go during the day. Don't go at night, and don't stop. Just drive through. It's it's amazing, and I think it is a very American thing too when you travel overseas. I mean, obviously, Americans travel a lot because we have the money to, but I don't think Americans understand. Like, look, going to London, England is not the same as going to Johannesburg, South Africa. Going to Paris, France is not the same as going to Lagos, Nigeria. Going to Cozumel, Mexico is not the same as going to Reynosa, Mexico. Reynosa is on the border.
Yeah.
I think we always want to flex. We want to show, and I'm just as guilty of it. When I go overseas, I take pictures. It's great, whatever. Hey, everybody, look at what my life is. But at the same respect, I don't think Americans understand that, like, poverty and struggle is a universal thing everywhere. And there's places like South Africa, unfortunately, where the gap between the haves and the haves not is a very wide gap, unfortunately. And it's this is what breeds these kind of things. This is the overall atmosphere that creates bad criminals. But then there's also something that I've heard, and I can't remember where I've heard it, but I've heard it in a lot of places. You are more likely to get robbed by a cop in South Africa than a regular citizen.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that involved as well. But when I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of corruption there. But there's one thing that I just want to bring up quickly, and it's more for your US viewers, right? It's not so much for the South Africans. Uh, and and South Africans are also guilty of it, to be honest. 'Cause- but for different reasons. Okay, so what I just want to say is, you guys in America, okay, have a lot of pride in yourself, okay, as a country. You fly your flag outside your houses. You are very pro your military. You're very pro your government. In general, I know there's
Yeah.
people that's against what I'm saying. The average person out there, right? Can I just say that 99% of the world don't feel about America the way you feel about America? Okay. A lot of the
Facts.
guys actually
Facts.
quite hate America. Okay. They quite hate America. So now you go somewhere, you're flexing your money, they hear your accent, they think, well, we'll show this fucker, you know? You get what I'm going with this. All right. So South Africa,
Explain what you mean by that. Explain, like, what is it about Americans that people don't like?
well, I think, this is just what I've heard from this side of the pond. It's not necessarily my view, right? Because I actually quite like America. I don't like certain peoples in America, but I don't mind America in general. Okay, so and that what I'm trying to say is okay. So a lot of people's opinions are, why do you always butt in everybody else's business? Why do you feel
Okay.
like you're the big brother of everybody else and need to try and push everybody else around? Keep to
Okay.
yourself and we'll keep to ourselves, right? And this is what happened in the last summit that I've seen, where Africa was telling everybody else in Europe to basically, why do you think you can always just come around and just be like, okay, we've arrived? No, bro. This is not like 1750 where Britain is attacking every fucking country. You're your own country. We're our own sovereign country. We make our own rules. We make our own laws. Okay. Don't come tell us we're being inhumane. You breeding a culture of people that's overweight, people that kill themselves, people that murder hundreds of kids. You must look internally first before you try and point the finger at other people. So what I'm saying is that that's the one problem, right? That once again, that's not what I believe. Okay,
But
it's
it's
just I know
yeah, I'm
some
asking.
people
I'm
that
just
believe it.
saying. Yeah. What are
Yeah,
the overall
yeah.
sentiments?
So that's the first thing. Okay, so they believe that a lot of the like America is too much in other people's business, right? Then I guess what's good for you is bad for somebody else. So jealousy makes you nasty, right? That's a saying in South Africa. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
something in America, but in South Africa there's a saying: jealousy makes you nasty. Okay, and
Yeah.
and that's another thing. So you're affluent, right? There's a 1 to 18 ratio in your dollar versus my rand. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm proud of what I've done in my life. I feel good in what I've achieved. Now you come to me and you flaunting your money. All right. Jealousy makes you nasty, bro. Because now I'm being annoyed with you. Why are you flashing your money to me? Okay. So that's the second thing. All right. And then there's a third thing. And this is something that I've actually addressed in one of my previous videos. Okay. And this is specifically for Americans because I don't know. It's not every American, but there's lots of Americans that's got that problem. Okay. That they've got the savior complex. Okay. So, what I mean when I say savior complex is that not everybody here is always looking for your handouts. Okay. We work to support ourselves. So don't assume like you guys have those videos, right? The fucking Penelope Cruz, the people in Africa with the fly flying on their eyeball, and
Hey,
those are the type of
hold
videos.
up. Penelope Cruz is an American. She's Spanish, sir. But I get what you're
No,
saying.
no,
I
no,
get the
sure.
sentiment.
No, sure. It's the principle of the matter, right? So you
Yeah. Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
got all
Yeah.
those videos flying around in the US, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of times people want to do good. Look, don't get me wrong. I do understand those that want to just purely do good, help others in need and those type of things, all right? But what I'm trying to say is don't assume others need your help, right? Certain
Yeah.
people living in the shacks, they live that way because that's the way they want to live.
To
That's their
live. That's their.
culture.
Yeah. 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 100.
They
But
don't
like I
need
said, it's
money.
different.
Yeah. So, and this is what I'm saying. So, a lot of the times, and I'm talking more for up in Africa, something because in South Africa that's not really relevant, right? So, because in South Africa, majority of the guys they've got some form of work or they have some form of income, may it be stealing, may it be whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
they got to live some way somehow, right? But yeah, it's just there's a general anti-America sentiment in many places. So what I'm trying to get to with that is don't go around flaunting your valuables when you're visiting places like South Africa, places like Lagos in Nigeria, because
Yeah.
you're gonna get robbed, my friend. Because you are flashy. You think, hey, look at me. I'm having this. Let me take this video or photo quickly. All right. You're gonna get robbed. Okay, because you're flashing your phone. I'm not even flashing my phone when I walk in the street, man. Okay, and I'm from South Africa. Just be vigilant. Think a little bit, And a lot of the times, people that get robbed is because they're flaunting their stuff, and it's not just Americans; it's South Africans. It's people from all over. I'm just saying because generally the people that would watch our videos are either going to be from South Africa or from America, and I'm saying just be a bit more vigilant when you're walking around in a bit of a dodgy area, not to be like, let's videotape these oaks a little bit, It's they're gonna take your video clip, my friend. Unless you're live, nobody's gonna ever see that video.
It's I asked that question for a very serious reason because I think a lot of Americans they hate us because they ain't us, and it's like that's not really true. It's that, you know, and I think it's also kind of just built into the fabric of the culture here. You're taught to be very, very proud of being American, which I say it all the time to you, and I'll say it live on this. Of any country in the world, I'm telling you, South Africans would fit in America the best. We're very proud. We're very proud. We're very hardworking. We respect the land, et cetera, et cetera. And like when I went and got the flag tattooed on me, one of the funniest comments I got was like, "Man, so American of you." It's like, and it's like, but they don't get it that, like, yes, man, like the South African mentality and the American mentality are both very much, and that's why I do this, so people can kind of see that, like, he's in another time zone in another country where there's more languages, et cetera, et cetera. But honestly, like the spirit and the will of South Africans and Americans are very, very close to each other.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier to you, South Africans also has it in like a different way. We're not necessarily like that about the country per se, but we are, for instance, like that about rugby. To give you an idea, I know we said we're not going to discuss rugby, but
no, but just yeah, of course,
because it's like a damn near religion here, right? And we think everybody loves the Springboks, right? Everybody fucking hates the Springboks, man.
I love it.
It's only us that love it.
You know I love it. Like, I love the hate. It feeds me. It feeds me.
So what I'm trying to say is that like we also in some aspects we got a very similar mindset when it comes to stuff like that, because we're very proud in ourselves, right? And we think like other people feel the same, but they fucking don't. They hate us.
Yeah, they hate us. Like, look, man, I can say personally say this, okay? Nobody likes Americans, but like South Africans are kind of on that same tier. Like, oh shit, 100%. They're South African. Like in New Zealand, Australia, oh shit, they're South African. It's like they don't want to. And then I would be quiet, and then I'd open my mouth, and they'd be like, oh shit, he's American. It's just kind of like, and it was kind of like looking at South Africans and going like, well, yeah, we have relation, obviously, for, blood wise, but it's like, yeah, first time, huh? And they're like, no, yours? Hell no. I'm used to being hated on. It's normal to me at this point, but yes, it's very much. What a weird episode. We started out on guns, and then we're like, why is gun violence so bad? And then we got into like the breakdown of the family. Now we're talking about the similarities, and we're talking about all this. I think this is going to be like this a lot, just because we have so much to say about everything. And it's funny that we go in a circle, and we always end up kind of in the same place, man. And that's what's so great about these conversations, man. It's so... Yeah, Dallas Cowboys Cup in my hand right now, but it's yeah, man. I wish it was easier for good people to get guns in South Africa to protect themselves, but I wish even more was that you didn't have so many bad people with guns. But that's the same here. And you wish that there were things that could fix that, but it's like the old saying, wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one gets filled first. And because of society's decay or, whatever, I mean, I brought up people not being able to go to school with black kids growing up here. That was 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah.
When you
were born, that long ago for us, eh?
Yeah, like you were a kid when all that stopped. Like, and we could go into it some other time how like things have flipped and like how the seat of power has shifted and how it's gotten harder for some South Africans while it's gotten easier, but still, like even after the shift, you still have the same amount of people living in poverty in your country, but now it's spread across ethnic lines. Now it's no longer just one group living in poverty. Everybody has it now. And it's like, if that's equal treatment, well, I guess that's equal treatment. But it's, I think it's sad because like people don't understand. I mean, like, we get shown pictures of like places like Iran back in the 50s and 60s, and it looks like Europe.
Yeah.
That's South Africa. South Africa was like a very, very clean, stable everything. And yes, it was during apartheid, which was a horrible, horrible thing. But with the resources, you should still be just like that. It's South Africa compared to America, yes, it's poor. Compared to Africa as a continent, no, it is not a poor country by any means. But the corruption and everything just makes it worse.
South Africa, I don't know if you know this, right? I think it was like in the 80s. South Africa and the US dollar, the rand and the US dollar had a 1-to-1 ratio, mate.
Really?
Back in the 80s? We weren't, I think it was like the 80s. It could be the 70s as well. I can't recall when. All right. But what I'm trying to say is there was like a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So South Africa wasn't poor. South Africa isn't poor. There's just a hell of a lot of corruption happening here, and a lot of money getting stolen and getting hidden away, and like all these type of things, right? And that is the problem, because if you consider South Africa, like did supply like 50% of the world's gold. Let that sink in, all right? 50 fucking percent of the world's gold that came out of South Africa, right? South Africa supplies like almost 100% of like Europe's fruit, Africa's fruit.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the type of stuff. So South Africa is very prominent, and they have a lot of industry that can make South Africa quite a lot more prosperous than what it is. But there's unfortunately a lot of criminal elements involved, and of course that brings us back to the crime story. And because crime, a lot of the crime is not just done with guns, right? A lot of it's done with, backdoor deals and, those type of things. So yeah, unfortunately, now that's where we're sitting at. And of course, a lot of it's got to do with poor global relationships, I guess, if one can say it that way as well. So number one, people don't invest in your country as much anymore because now you're openly criminal, blah 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 blah. You've got bad relationships with different countries, so now those trading situations becomes worse, and eventually you just decay your country to such an effect that you got an 18 rand to $1. Eventually, you know what I mean?
It's and people don't understand that. Like, they don't like, obviously the war in Ukraine. The UN ran a thing and said, hey, we need everybody to back Ukraine. There were only 2 countries that didn't back Ukraine. And it was the Republic of South Africa, and I think the other one was like Venezuela or Cuba. And it was like, why would they do that? And I have to explain to people that the ANC, they called themselves comrades. The ANC is a communist party. Like, they are allied with Russia. Like, and it's sad because it's like a country so wealthy doesn't need to align itself with anyone. They could be their own thing. But because of the world we live in, it's like, oh, you've got to be buddy-buddy with this person, buddy-buddy with this country, buddy-buddy with this country to make anything work. And it's like, I explain to Americans a lot, Africa, not South Africa, but the entire continent of Africa is the only continent in the entire world that could shut itself off from the rest of the world and not need a damn thing. You've got oil, you've got rubber, you've got textiles, you've got minerals, you've got everything. Africa could shut itself off from the rest of the planet and not have to worry about a damn thing from the rest of the planet. It's the only continent that can say that.
So at the end of the day, South Africa, well, Africa as a whole, they're very much influenced by Chinese trade, by those type of countries that does a lot of investment into the development of many of these African countries. And South Africa itself is very much aligned with that because they are part and parcel of the BRICS agreement, right? So, and the BRICS agreement is Brazil, Russia, South Africa, India, and who's the last one? Who's the other one?
China.
China. Yeah.
Yeah.
So effectively, so of course they're not going to back different countries, and they didn't go for it, or they didn't go against it either. So we were very much Switzerland in that regard, in the fact that we were very much neutral in the conversation. We said we will help with this discussions, right? But we're not getting involved. We're not sanctioning Russia because they're one of our trading partners, right? And also we're not going the other way, because then that would once again mess up our trading partners in the West, for instance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. We were very much. We said we're not going to be pressed into a corner to make a decision as to who we're backing. We're not. We're just not. Right. And that's, I guess, why a lot of people hate us as well at the moment, because we said, stuff you. You're not telling us what we're going to do. We're not going to back you, and we're not going to back you either. We're just going to sit here on the sideline and wait for the shit to blow over, and we can continue business as usual.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
But yeah, man, I think we've gone through a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
I know we have got to get ready in less than 3 hours. Our boys will be up for their most important game. And I'm going to say, since the final in 2019.
Yeah.
Would you say?
100%. I agree. I agree. 100%.
This is going to be the game that, in my opinion, determines who wins the Rugby World Cup. You already know who I'll be supporting. And it ain't the USA Eagles, and it ain't Ireland, because I'm not Irish. With that being said, do you have a definitive date when you will be able to finally have your firearm in your hand?
No.
Jesus.
I don't even have my competency yet. So, and they'd say that it takes like a year or so once you got your competency. So, I don't know.
Well, I hope you stay safe. Those taxi drivers, I hope they stay out of your way.
I hope for their sake as well.
Yeah.
I hope for their sake as well, bro.
But I just want everybody, if this is your first time listening to this podcast, we're going to do this every week. Pierre and I, we met on YouTube. We started chatting, WhatsApp, and it's just developed into like a thing where I call him on lunch most days at work after I talk to my fiance, and we just talk about anything and everything. And that's why we decided to do this, because we have some of the most interesting conversations, and he is one of the rare South Africans where his accent is not so strong that you can't understand a word the man is saying. And as a matter of fact, I won't put him to it this time, but we're going to do an episode in the future, and I'm going to try and see if I can get Pierre to sound exactly like an American. And he's going to try and get me to sound more like a South African.
I'll try my best, man, because, my wife does say my accent changes as soon as I start speaking to you. So I would imagine that, in fact, the other day we were going to go and do the live in the rugby, right? This is a funny story, right? Just quick, right? And I had people over, right? And then obviously we saw we had a delay. But anyway, so the people I had over, so I was busy talking to you on the recording, right? And then the one lady tells my wife, she's like, "Why is his accent changing?" So I guess it happens.
Like, yeah, we'll do an accent tag video at some point, because I think it's just funny, because there's a lot of words that even I say that don't sound like an American. And we'll get to that another time. But yeah, Pierre, any last words Not last like dying, but last words for this episode.
Oh yeah, fuck. Let's hope it's not my dying words, because then I'm really on the spot right now. But no, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us once again in another podcast. I mean, we do appreciate every single one of you guys, and we of course would love any input that you guys would have. I mean, you're allowed to have your own opinions and thoughts. You don't have to agree with us always. It would be great if you do, but if you don't, then that's fine too. And yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us wherever you might be, on iTunes, on Deezer, on YouTube, wherever it is. Thank you for uh, your time that you spend to listen to us, and I hope you're all blessed and have a fantastic night.
Cheers, guys.